Hi everyone, welcome back to the Worldwide Travel Podcast. This week we have a guest with us she's from Baltimore in the US, but now she lives in Cairo. She has two businesses, experienceegypttours.com and souljourneytravel.com. Tell us before we get into that, uh, welcome to Alexandra as well and Elsa from our team.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
Please don't cut this.
That's epic.
So funny. All right. Well, yeah. Welcome everyone. Hi. First of all, hi Michelle. Hi Elsa. Hi Luke. This has been quite the day. We were just talking a few moments ago that if anything, Michelle was saying this, if anything could have gone wrong, it did today. So here we are. Here's another sample of that. No, but I mean, Luke has had enough of me and Elsa. Like he hears us all the time.
Poor thing.
It's nothing new to him. He's not gonna introduce us because he's tired of us already. So welcome. First of all, welcome Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, let's get right into it. I mean, Luke was
And bearing with us as well.
with us. Yeah. We did have some issues connecting today. But to be honest with you, I'm just as excited and just as anxious as Luke to learn more about about your businesses. So let's start with that, and then we'll try to kind of move forward step by step and learn how you got to Egypt. Because that's quite you don't hear that every day. And fun fact, I also lived in Egypt when I was younger, like 10, 12, 13 years ago. And yeah, and it's always fun to hear someone else's perspective is going through the same thing. So yeah, let's start with the businesses.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for having me. I am Michelle Powell. I am the owner of Soul Journey Travel and the co-owner of Experience Egypt Tours that operates here in Cairo. So about my companies, we are originally started by my grandfather in the 1970s, which was a Black travel group. And so I've had the honor of being able to continue this legacy and expanding it, where we now serve and have a DMC here located in Egypt with that is that we can be able to provide and handle and manage all of your tours here in Egypt. So yeah, I'm very grateful and blessed to be coming to you guys from, and that's a little bit about my company.
Yes, it's a family business. Sorry, look, it's just I'll let you speak in a moment. Sorry. So it's a family business, and was it always focused on Egypt in specific, or
No, sorry. No, I can't say that was ever part of it. When my grandfather started, of course I wasn't even born yet. However, when I've got, knowledge of it, it was just a travel group that they would come together with their friends, specifically for African Americans, and not necessarily from Baltimore because they were from the Prince George's County area, Washington D.C. area, but they just had a love for traveling and, from my understanding, develop it. Unfortunately, he passed away in '04, so I didn't get handed the company directly, but traveling was always. I grew up kind of understanding this industry, being associated with. And so prior to, I worked in court, I worked in legal in the States, and then I worked for the Department of Justice for the last 10 of those years. And, I was just ready for something new, something I was passionate about, and being able to take that risk and feeling like, okay, we're going to see where this lands. So I've been really grateful. And like I said, because I have this connection to my legacy, it was just like, okay, I'm just really walking in my purpose. And that is the blessing overall.
absolutely. And sorry, Luke, again, I'll let you speak one second. He says, no, the thing is, I've been a lot about this, finding your purpose, I guess, and like focusing your whole life around it, like, because there's people like to make this distinction between like your career and your life, like you have your work life and then you have your personal life. But I don't see it that way. Like it should be like it's all one thing. Like there's no distinction really. And so, I'm always happy to talk to someone who's managed to sort of like unify those two things that are not really shouldn't really be distinct from one another. And before I'll let Luke speak, and I promise, I swear I'll let you talk. But what I guess what I wanted to ask was, did you actually get the chance to travel with your grandpa? You said it died in 01st. You're very young, I assume. But I did you get the chance to share those experiences with them?
I did. He took me on my first international vacation, which was, oh my gosh, 2003. We went to Toronto. And it was at that time, they already knew this. It was my first, oh my gosh, I had just finished my freshman year. And so in it, I had a passion for taking French classes, and I think I went to like French 3 at that point. So everybody kind of knew that I had this obsession kind of with Paris and, of course, wanting to speak French. And so that was supposed to be like the gateway to like, okay, well, let's see how you handle Montreal. So yeah, that was my first international trip that I got to take with him. And we did, of course, would do like some domestic tours as well too, that would just make it convenient, for a multitude of people. But that was the first out of the country, and then he passed, the next summer. But yeah, since then, I mean, gosh, I'm not one of those people that sit and kind of count all the countries they went to, only because it's like, I don't know. I just never put that much emphasis on feeling like I needed to get to, I guess it's at 195 now, but getting to that number. I just knew that, let me just keep on saying. So when we have a conversation, like, yeah, I've been there. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, of course, we've done that. And so I'm really grateful that letting that being like the segue, that has just kind of been my mantra. And even when we post our tours, it's always with the intent of, hey, we just want to get you in new places to see new things, to see that one, that you deserve it and that it is affordable beyond what you kind of your understanding of. So a little long-winded, but yes, to answer your question, yes, I did get to go out of the country. And then of course I got to live vicariously through whatever he would bring back from said countries, that now I could appreciate and say like, oh, I remember when he got this scarf in Morocco, or, this in Thailand, or, for whatever reference points.
Yeah, okay. That's actually, I think, much more meaningful when you get to do that as an adult, right? Because as a kid or like a teenager, maybe you don't really appreciate it to its core, right?
Mm-hmm. I didn't do a lot of international traveling as a kid. While I did do a lot of domestic traveling in the States, um, I can't, I can only answer for the journey that I've completed. What I would do differently for my child, of course, is like, to have children is like, of course, I want you to see places earlier than maybe I had, because
Yeah.
your conversations could shift and be different. And of course, especially with technology, just having that advancement and having access to that. But like I said, nonetheless, I think that because he passed when I was just, entering adulthood, what I always wonder is just like, where would the journey have gone as soon as I graduated, undergrad, or where would it be? At this, he probably would be in his 90s now. So, I can't say Pops would have been, riding that flight, or, been for it now. But who knows? I want to say that his spirit would have. And so in it, it's always like taking a piece of him when I'm going somewhere, because I know like, just certain things that I would, and not even that, some of the founding the beginning members, they're still alive to this day. So I get to have conversations with them. Like, I don't know if you've gotten to visit the Soul Journey website, but I would encourage you to, because there's a section and you'll see the picture from Montreal that I'm referring to. But I like to call them like our silver seniors, where these women traveled with my grandfather and went all over the world. And, I've understood as we get older, we start to acquire things beyond our reason. So as a result, I haven't gotten like the pictures, to just confirm and just like, oh, because they haven't gone through their basements or whatnot. But I love to be able to have them comment on my post on Instagram and, reference my grandfather and how they think he would be so proud of me, and knowing that part of my history to validate it, because anybody can say anything about who they were, what they were about, or where they come from, but to actually have people, affirm that for you and encourage you, beyond just affirming, it's more encouraging you to feel like, okay, there is a connection to ancestry here. So yes, I'm so grateful, really, really so grateful.
So, based on your websites, do you offer tours around the whole of Egypt, like through the Nile tours, through the pyramids, through the Alexandria?
Yes. Yes, we do. So in it, I guess a standard tour, and I'm sure Alexandra can like concur to this. It's like when people come here, of course, everybody knows about the Great Pyramids. And this is not a fact because I feel like sometimes the number shifts, but there's 118 pyramids in Egypt, presently. So a lot of times people don't understand that it's like, there's so many other aspects to see here. They know of Cairo, they know of Luxor. Of course, Alexandria, is now being integrated or part of the routine. Aswan is a very popular. Abu Simba, you will always see footage about. And now the Red Sea, cities, as far as Hurghada, Sharm, has become very popular because affordability, and then it just gives you that same offer of if you like Egypt, I'm sorry, if you like beaches in other areas, it's just experience a different one, and how it could be a routine, place for you to visit.
So I know for a fact that Alexandra is keen on doing a Nile tour, and me and my wife are also keen to visit Cairo as well. So you have some new customers.
Look forward to welcoming you. That's music to my ears. I would happily, because prior to you guys, we were talking about the cuisine. So Luke, now that I know that especially he's a meativore. I guess I know that's not really like a word, but in it, I know it's a reference to say no, don't even let him try his koshari. But then after that, like bring out the lamb, bring out the real meals.
I think that the food that I had in Egypt definitely is right up. I'll never forget it. Right up there, the top best. I guess best dishes, best not dishes, like best cuisine. I guess you could say choices for me personally. Definitely. And speaking of the meats, yeah, like the best beef, probably the best beef.
Also, when I'm traveling, I like to eat like the food that's from that region, and I like to push the boat out a little bit. And I know in Egypt they eat pigeons.
Well, this one.
So-
In the bones, the stuff. It's it's foreign for me because pigeons in the States are like rats in the sky, like we equate them to that. So no one ever thinking to eat a pigeon. So when I got here and there, it's like a delicacy here. It's like, and then they love saying, and don't get me wrong, because they cook with so much passion, especially when you get it from someone's home. They really take pride in like, oh, it's delicious. Try. I have tried it once. I'm going to leave. I'm going to read. It's not my routine go to. It wasn't horrible. I mean, it tasted like poultry, so there was no lacking there. It was just a different. Yeah, I can't wait for you to come because I will definitely make sure you get pigeon. You get your pigeon.
Well, you'll get the best pigeon in the whole of Cairo.
So last week we were talking about risks when we travel, and I've noticed there's a lot of scams around the area around the pyramids, and I also wanted to ask about the camels, because I have under my impression that the camels were treated not the best. They don't eat well, they don't drink enough water, they don't get enough rest.
Well, we did talk about this last week, and it's crazy because it is both of them are such controversial subjects here, because culturally they're going to be defending to whatever behavior, whatever actions that they take, right? So I'm gonna approach this for both angles, right? Because in starting with like you said scams at the pyramids, it's the practice. It's not necessary. I think scams exist everywhere, right? But I think that it's the practice and the intent and maybe like the hustle culture, right? Unfortunately, Egyptians have been resorted to really trying to squeeze anything out of the currency value, And what I have just come to understand just from being in just other urban areas is when you have people that are starving, they just do things, they behave a particular way because in their mind they got to eat, they got to eat. this comes over inappropriate. It comes over bad. There's no other, it comes over bad when other people come across it. Yeah, and I think and it's the relentlessness of it, right? You got to respect it because it's like, well, look, that taking no for an answer is just how far you want to keep going when I've already said no. It's like that borderline. What I always encourage people is understand the conversations that you're going to have with somebody, right? Because if you linger for too long and give somebody hope, well, then they're going to continue to think that you're an easy prayer target. It's like children, where it's like they sense your fear, or animals or whatnot, right? People that are looking for something that they can identify from you quickly, or they assess, they really are just like, oh no, you got the money. You got, what I need to give to me. And I saw parts of that risk assessment. I think it was from the YouTubes, and looking at that, and it's like, and preparing people. That I tell them this quote: "You're here for a good time, not a long time." Right. So in it, how mad can you afford to be? Right. If somebody, when I first came here, my first time, um, it wasn't that I was introduced. I don't know if I ever did any history, because Egypt wasn't really on like the list to visit. I just came across an amazing travel deal, that it was like, okay, this is too good not to take advantage of. And then that's how I ended up here. And so I saw that it was highly recommended, to get a guide. I'm definitely one of those travelers that I don't want to be over inundated with a bunch of history. So a lot of times when you have a guide, they feel that it's necessary to tell you history after history. And it's like, look, there's only so much knowledge, that I can take in. One, you said what?
That I can fit.
Yeah. And it's also to do something with. And two, there might be a service directly, what I need. So I think what I've come to understand, respectfully, is that the lack of education doesn't provide the opportunity to see that maybe if you went about it a different way, people wouldn't have such a negative outlook on how you approach them. So in regards to the hustle schedule, look, be tougher than if I've got to say this in the playway because I don't want to curse on here. But as they say, like, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Okay. So if you know that they're going to be aggressive, you got to beat it too. No conversations. Keep directly moving. If they don't have a gun, then they not an officer. That's a big key that people don't understand when they get hustled. And I be watching those videos, and it's like they flashed a paper badge at you. Why did you think that he was a real officer? Why would you take that seriously? But I also went from a major city in the city, in the state, excuse me. So they kind of prepared me a little bit more differently than others. But, these are, in my presence and being here, this is what I want people to take away from it, because I think that Egypt is absolutely beautiful. You deserve to be able to see something different. You deserve to see one of the seven wonders. You do not deserve to be harassed and, somebody that's dealing with it and thinks that it's your job to finance them. But find that middle ground, right? Because you're here for a good time, not a long time. So if it costs you in your currency $5 and you had the $5 to lose, don't stress over it. Some things I do understand because I argue just off of principle, and I have to really reflect that. But Michelle, that was $2. Was that really worth 20 minutes? Especially when I know I work for myself and I know how I am gauging, my profit margins and, your time. But that was what I say in regards to scamming, or just how their approach are going about it. I do see the government here taking actions a little bit differently, especially in how they're setting up the tourist sites here recently. They've integrated some new changes as far as at the Great Pyramids. So I would say that if people are making a fuss, well, sometimes you can't argue with the employees. You got to go to corporate, okay? Because you're falling on deaf's ear and you're aggravating yourself. And if the government is taking heed in, their administration for tourism on how they're doing their practices, I think that there's going to be some shifts. So in your visit, it just might look a little differently, and hopefully the publicity will change, because Egypt it does have some great value, you just can't also help that they are raised and things are available differently here. So they have to kind of fight and go at it different. And you'll know it because if you watch how they drive, in the States, we are very much on red light stop. Red light means stop, present means stop. Where there is like, okay, only something blocking me is stopping me. I'm going to go around.
Not even that. Sometimes I'll maybe push that out of the way a little bit.
Very true. Very true. So, you just you breathe, take deep breaths, right? You can only control you. So then you asked me about the animal practices, right? And in all in all realness, I'm not a big animal person, right? So I don't follow these stories religiously. However, I am aware. And I saw recently, even with the story with the woman that spotted this boy or some young guy beating, without no reason, this animal, a camel, or maybe it was a sheep. I can't remember the full story, right? Because there's always stories, right? There's somebody's always, um, yeah, I will say, I think the world is starting to force them to have a change. And I know that just from a third party company that we work with, they were very, uh, recently we were doing a photo shoot with them, and in their wanting their publicity, they were very adamant about, we do not want pictures of people on camels and whatnot, because they're standing behind the position of animal rights. And I think that having a cause and having a stance is how you create that change. What I hope that we also take the same regards for the citizens that feel that it's necessary to treat animals that way. What is going on, is what is lacking in your psyche that you feel the need to take it out on a defenseless animal? And the real reality is, them animals are 10 times their size. I don't know why they don't kick them in the face, but I do understand, I understand why, ultimately, if they, whatever conditions, and, you know, like I said, with the administration getting so much scrutiny, and even in you asking, because this is going to go out into the universe, hopefully this just accelerates the need for change, because change is necessary for all the reasons that anybody has anything negative to say. It's because of what they're subjected to, and hurt people hurt other people. So I don't know if that these people are treating these animals this way because they're so hurt. But if you look at their conditions, the conditions don't, like, just the physical conditions of said person, they don't look in the much better conditions than that camel. So I think that's something we're not, I know this is like, that's a different type of conversation, but I think it matters in understanding what you're observing, because people can only be as great as they're allowed to be. So, if these camels are not treated well and they're not eating well, are the people that are maintaining them, are they also being fed well? I don't know. I do know that, with their currency issue, I can't speak for all. I can see, I mean, it's 22 million people in the city. And if you just, Alex can just tell you, just in being here, you see a lot of dilapidated conditions. So to understand that people live in those, it's like, this is that world peace, Gandhi approach, where it's just like, okay, we got to start taking care. This matters across the board, this matters across the board. I don't know how that change is going to go about, I do hope that what I do love about you wanting to come here, Luke, is that you will help improve an economy that is lacking,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you will see, Luke, that there are indeed people living in extreme poverty. Like, you wouldn't imagine, right? The type of conditions, and of course, that's one thing. But then, in more in my country, in every if you go to the countryside, in every pretty much in every country in this world, if you go to the countryside, you're gonna find people who that's how it's been done, basically. Like, how you're gonna teach the dog not to whatever if you don't hit him, hit it, whatever, him, her, whatever. So that's until someone from the outside, like in this case, for instance, a company, right, would come and say, hey, we don't want to work with you if you're gonna treat your animals so and so. Like, that will definitely bring change. That will definitely make people think, like, there's another way to do it. Like, there's another way to treat animals. Like, there's another way to do this whole thing. But otherwise, there's also an element of, this is how it's been done for centuries, And so, to you, it seems like a terrible thing, and it is a terrible thing objectively. But in more traditional parts of the world, even in your country, I don't know. Like, maybe if you go to the countryside in the UK, I don't know, maybe there's someone who's also like kicking their dog or whatever. At least I know for sure in my country, in the countryside, there's definitely people like that. There may be not the majority, but that's happening. So there's that. But you're gonna, like, with collaborating with companies and that are gonna impose those values, like, that will obviously get people to think, yeah, like maybe there's another way, and let's see what that would look like. But and to go back to the scams, which was your first question, 'cause, yeah, like there are people who live in extreme poverty, and they will like there's a certain desperate. It's not like they're not really trying to scam you, but there's a desperation, like, and they're like trying to just earn a living somehow. And but you just have to be firm. Just say no. Look, that's she said, look, but don't say no in the same way that you would say no in like London or something. I don't know, like oh no, thank you. No, just like no. Be very firm with your no, and that's it. And then yeah, don't have a principle that don't debate principles, because like no country in the Middle East is good for debating principles, because they'll just spend the whole day there, and it will just it will just be two people like forever finding arguments to support their side. So yeah.
Do you have any questions for Michelle, Elsa?
I actually, yes, I do. And that's very interesting, because I have so many Egyptian friends. And for me, traveling is not about just going and seeing the pyramids or whatever, Sharm Sheikh or whatever it is. But what are those what are those like hidden gems, like those things that no one talks about, but these are like, oh, you have to go there and see that.
Oh, okay. Today I went to Saqqara Pyramids, which is here in Cairo. It's beautiful. And I think what gets escaped from it is that a lot of what people see on social media for the columns from Luxor, excuse me, from Karnak Temple, excuse me, sometimes they can't get down there. But when you go there, it's almost that same visual. It might not have the same graphics on the side, but it gives that feel. It's usually less crowded. I think you just get more value in the complex. So I would definitely say, as far as sites, that's definitely like a hidden gem. Here in Another thing here in in Cairo, let's say. I live actually on the outside in Giza, but I live in Sheikh Zayed. So it's like I realize there's certain language that we call this in states, and then I thought this was everybody was calling like their suburban county, areas, but I apparently it's more of a Baltimorean thing. But in it, so here, I think if you're into shopping, like Arkin Plaza, I feel like Arkin Plaza, Mall of Arabia, Mall of Egypt, uh, Festival City Mall. It's in New Cairo. Those are like hidden gems. Like those are not necessarily on your to visit plan. A lot of restaurants by the Nile. Crimson, with beautiful views. Crimson is very nice. I like Pier 88. Where else could I say off the top? Just restaurant. So in other parts of Egypt. Aswan, I think, is a hidden gem. But I think in going there, because for you understanding that there's hustles that goes here or scams, pay for the convenience, because they can't. The more you pay, the less people can get in the spaces that they can't afford. So I feel like with Aswan, I think that Old Cataract Hotel is amazing. And they literally, I didn't remember what the history behind it was, but Agatha Christie, I think, like wrote some book or something there. So just in seeing it, they have some write up in the restaurants there. So I think that that's worth, definitely experiencing. Felucca rides, but not just any, like more of like, it's kind of hard to list because there's so many high ends. You'll have like the Now Dinner cruises, but it's the type of the cruises that are differently available. And if you like what type of shows you like to see, I think those are the Cave Church. Okay, I'm see now you've got me started. There's the Cave Church here. I think that is definitely a hit. In Baron's Palace. Those are two hidden gems. They're hardly ever crowded. They never went. They weren't crowded when I went. But there's just a certain level of peace that you just experience there. They're not one of those heavily populated. However, you guys will start to understand once we get done with this conversation, the algorithm is going to show you all the aspects of Egypt that you didn't even know existed. You're going to be forwarded like, Michelle, what is this? Where is this located? So I think that is definitely, and then Siwa. I personally haven't been there, but Siwa is the salt oasis, in the Oasis Desert. And if you've seen pictures here in Egypt where people are floating in the water, that's in Siwa. So the not even secret, but the tea behind, let's say the tea behind Siwa is it's 10 hours one way. So it's not one of those popular, like, yes, I want to sit in a car for 10 hours, 10 plus to get to this destination, But from what I've understand from my friends that have been, they've just talked about just the level of enjoyment that they got from just the serenity. Like it is very not the conveniences of everyday life here. Plumbing can be very questionable. It's like camping, but probably camping. I camped my parents used to camp a lot in the 90s. So I'm going to associate it with that where it's like, okay, yeah, you can have some modern luxuries, but you're here for the experience. You're not here for the flip the electricity, the conveniences of life. You're here to understand that sometimes you need to check out of what the conveniences that you think are necessities. Some people are surviving without. So those are things I would say definitely for each. Oh my gosh, I really could go on. I'm all about exploring, and that's the beauty of not only being an expat is that everything is new to me here. While of course, we have so many tours going throughout the world, and just being in this area, like, I know also you're in Dubai. So I was just in Abu Dhabi a few months ago. I was supposed to be in Dubai this weekend. We had to shift some things, but having that convenience to just hop over. We have it's a more recent airport, which is the Sphinx Airport, but they have a budget-friendly airline that's called Wizz that takes routes. And I got a flight last year for like $130, right? Now, I understood why it was $130, but however, if that's, what my affordability is at the time, and it allows me to go over the UAE, just for that, like, oh my goodness, that's, there's flights in the States round trip that would never be that cheap, so I love, those are also, I think, added effects to the added benefits, I'm sorry, to the secret gems here is that you have so many versatilities to be able to hop around, even here in Egypt, Alguna, I have not been yet. And then of course, but I've just heard how beautiful those coastal cities are. So it definitely, this was mentioned before, it is definitely much more than just pyramids. There's definitely a lot to experience, good and bad. But when you just focus on the good that you want to, see from that, you can't go wrong. And also just Middle Eastern cuisine in general, Syrian food. I would have never thought that I would have tried Syrian food. And I'm sure, we have like different fast versions of in the States, but they didn't taste like this,
Yeah, they'll never taste like that. Never,
Yeah.
ever.
Every time in Europe, I miss it. I miss Middle Eastern cuisine, like every single day.
I was recently just having Turkish food, and I'm like, I need to go to Turkey because this kebab was delicious. So, and it's like they have something called kofta here, which is
Yeah.
Okay. So if you understand kofta, they have like a chicken version. So what I'm seeing is that like a lot of it is also served in Turkey, and every Turkish restaurant that I've been to here has been really good. So I'm like, let me hop over to Turkey. Let me see what's happening over there. So yeah, there's so many conveniences of being in this city that if you don't Jordan, an hour and a half flight, just the conveniences of, we get a lot of people that always want to go over there or that do the Sinai tours. Dahab is also another gem. I'm so sorry. I know you probably didn't expect all this, but this country is worth visiting, even though they've got stuff with them and we understand, right? But there's so much of value to be taken away. And like I said, the more people that come, it kind of helps them to understand, hey, we lose out on this. Like, Gaza hurt the tourist industry terribly here. And for it to hurt them so bad, and they weren't even a participant in the activities, just shows that why they need tourism and why they need to have different people from the outside to show them differently. Because it also is not as convenient for them to travel. They have to go through a more scrutinized process. And I didn't understand that until I got here. And then I had to understand how to be so grateful for being from a country that allows me to, to not have to not to be questioned so much. The process of going through is nowhere near. So it's like, oh, I understood what that American privilege really came from when I, moving here. I never would have thought that that would have, been the case. But definitely see that. So yes, that's what to answer your question. That would be a lot of the hidden gems to try. But of course, always hit my company up. Always feel free to hit me up, social media, anywhere. I try to highlight these places that I spoke of. And I can definitely, what I don't know, I can definitely put you in touch with somebody that can give you the best information on why it's good for you, or, or vice versa.
So,
Luke, I'll let you ask first, and then I'll
Cairo was actually one of the cities that made me want to create this podcast, because it's high on my list to visit, and we actually planned to visit this year, but we actually postponed that because when I travel somewhere, I like to do a lot of research to find out what's the best place to visit, what's the best place to stay, where to eat, like every aspect of research.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that Egypt was quite out of my comfort zone to do some planning. And I thought, if we made a podcast, then we can have people who are actually from there, or we can have people who are expats like you, Michelle, that know more about it. Rather than asking Google, then we can ask a person about it. It'd be much better. So my question is, where is the best place to stay in Cairo? Because I've seen in Giza, the hotels around there are like really, really cheap. But is it better to stay in Cairo?
I think you can stay in both. I think to answer that question would be, what is your level of traveling? Like, can we run a scenario? I don't know how we are on time, but can you tell me, how do you like to travel? And then based off that, I'm going to tell you what I think is the best, because I have a lot of experience with these hotels here.
Are they actually? Obviously, they're so cheap, but do you still get a good value for money there and stuff like that in these hotels?
Yeah, you definitely can. Can you tell me some examples of the hotels that you stay at now? And I can say, like, either would they be synonymous with that or something similar to that, to gauge what maybe the value would be?
I think it would be
when we go abroad, we like
wanted to just because it requires to clarify a little bit. Sorry, but first of all, like if you compare the Egyptian pound to the British pound, everything's going to be cheap in Egypt compared. So that's not unusual, I would say. And also, like Cairo is a huge city. It's bigger than London, I think. And that's like we kind of have to narrow it down a little when you say like.
So I would say, okay, I think Egypt has their different measure, just to help guide this question a little bit more. Egypt has its own measure of how they assess 5-star. Okay, I'm saying that respectfully. So with that being the case, if you were to say in Giza, if you were a person that truly enjoys a more luxury, a more high-end experience, in Giza, definitely any of the Hyatts. They have two. One just opened recently. When I first came, I stayed there. And I hope when they see this, they really reach out to say, Michelle really be speaking on our behalf very well. But the Hyatt Regency, definitely comfortable, definitely modern, definitely clean, not super high end, but definitely luxury nonetheless. I think it's just a different. If you were the Mina House, the Marriott Mina House is probably the most popular because it is the hotel, a 5-star hotel that is exactly in front of the pyramids. So you have rooms that have direct access of the pyramids. So it's very, Instagram, very social media, influencer, driven. But I do think that there's a lot of boutiques that probably don't get the limelight that they deserve. They probably are going to rank more in the 4 stars, but as far as, you can be very comfortable. These are going to be probably more on King Faisal Street. So I'm trying to think, like maybe Pyramid. Ooh, I'm going to be honest. I don't necessarily recommend people there, but if it's going to be somebody that asks me for more, that's probably I would lead it. Normally we get more luxury clients. So I can probably more speak on that, as I was telling you the hotels before. In the Cairo area, I think a lot of the hotels high-end along the Corniche give you great value. Specifically, I would say the Marriott Omar Khayyam Casino and Hotel. I've seen rooms probably average between 100 to 200 a night, depending on the season. But I would respectfully say about 150 a night. I've definitely seen, and it depends on the season. I think that also adds a lot of what you can for your value, right? So if you're a person that has availability to give between 100 to 100, I mean to 150 or to 200, you probably could come in September or October where it's not their high season. So to get that luxury experience or more comfortable experience maybe you're desiring, you can just come in the seasons where it might not be as comfortable outside, but you definitely will sleep more comfortably. But definitely in those hotels, you could definitely find some hotels very comparable to quality ones that you've seen in other countries, or just Hilton. And also Hilton, I shamelessly have to plug them. I have family and friend access, so it's definitely, but I know like the Hilton Luxor customer service. I love the Sonesta as well too. We send a lot of our guests there, but the Steigenberger, that's also a good brand here. They have 2 locations, one in Cairo, one in Giza. Giza, you have to be a little careful though now for Giza, right? Because the Grand Egyptian Museum also just opened up. So, everybody is loving being in that close proximity. So a good way, to kind of, you can always just kind of gauge in like general search engines to kind of see what booking is showing, what Travelocity or Google or whatnot. If you have, that's a good way to kind of see what the value is, and literally just look at the hotels that are in your category that you're desiring, right? I personally, my favorite hotel in the city is St. Regis on the Nile. I love it. Like, it's just, I mean, they literally just kind of have an observatory pool in the middle. You walk over. It's just beautiful. It's such but it also is a price point. The rooms are beautiful, but it is a price point that not everybody might not feel comfortable paying. So I kind of try to gauge where people's at and see, but I would definitely recommend looking on like Booking or something like that, just to kind of see, shop the seasons. I think that's a better way. I think, and a lot of times people, I think because the competition is so real, you speak it into their culture of ethics or their work ethics, but a lot of times, because there's so many competitors here, you would be really surprised how you can get something. I mean, like I said, I have family and friend discounts, so I can speak to that. But I've gotten rooms like between $50 to $100 at the Hilton, and this was like one of their newer ends. You never know what promotion they could be having, going on. So they're very eager to, definitely get these rooms filled and to put the story together. And I'm sorry, but I was probably more so saying is that it's easier to kind of go about what you're comfortable spending in a tour and then shopping that way, right? Because there's also things to add on here in Egypt. It's recommended to have a guide just because the chaos is not something that you're used to. So it's more so to keep you more of a peace of mind and give you firsthand account, as to what's going on. I don't deliver the tours that I deliver are more of like the shopping tours, the foodie tours, right? So for the things that we talked about, and I clearly am very passionate about, that's because I do those things all the time. But I am very respectful and grateful for my presence here in this country. And so I think it's a disservice to try to, tell their history when I can just employ and support locally. And so I've, just for my team, I know that we take pride on making sure that everybody is comfortable and understanding their value. And nothing is a better compliment when somebody is grateful for your presence and helping get them through this process. Because, it's literally the guide service, I guess it's probably provides that concierge service where it doesn't feel like I'm a fish out of water. I don't know. I've only heard Egypt is always compared to, I guess, New Delhi or India. And I always hear between these two regions. I haven't been there yet, but they always say that it's very, very similar to the pace. And I don't know if their tourism is. I never hear about a bunch of guides from there, so I don't know. But yeah, I would say go about it that way. Know what your budget, what you're comfortable is, because then that helps you know what you can afford to do here, right? Whether you can go to another city, whether you can hop, flights. Also, how long you're going to stay here. If you want to get a very enjoyable. I don't even say relaxing, an enjoyable time here. A 10-day, span is definitely best, and give yourself at least 2 of those days to plan nothing, because this sun here is like no other. It is, the summertime can be so brutal. I don't recommend people to necessarily come during summer. However, tourism happens all the time. And if summer is your only availability, we'll figure out a way to make it work by taking breaks and, finding that grace, starting earlier, but also give yourself time to decompress. Drink a lot of water. I'm definitely more disciplined when I'm in the States, but here, because it's just so hot, sometimes I don't even think to drink water, because I'm just thinking, cool, how do I get cool? I'm not thinking rational, like, oh yeah, drink water and it stays hot. I'm just thinking, gosh, it's hot. I don't want to move. I don't want to do anything. So that's why you guys see me drinking constantly different liquids to just stay hydrated, because it's very, very hot here. But ironically, they do get a winter time, and that's their high season. So in it, just know you're going to pay for, cooler temps. Everybody is coming here. They like coming here for Christmas. They like coming here for New Year's. Yeah, it definitely, when you're ready, I cannot encourage you more. Just reach out. I have no problems to help you to figure out how do we make this the best experience. And conversations like this, I mean, of course, we would never, in another scenario, to probably talk this long to figure out what you need from Egypt. But conversations like this help me to understand that, I've gotten to what type of traveler you are and what you like to expect. So in it, when we just, narrow down the logistics, right? I know ultimately everybody wants everything for the low. Everybody wants it cheap. I mean, duh, like nobody is like, don't get me wrong. We do have some clients that are just like, look, my budget is $20,000, plan, I got this many days. And it's like, okay, clients like that make it a lot easier, but that's not necessarily the reality. The person typically that comes here spends between 2 to 4,000. That is like a respectable range per person. So figuring out if that is your comfort, okay, if I have, and because it's a hustle, you got to be careful how somebody asks you that question of how much do you want to spend, right? Because you can tell when somebody is just looking to spend you all the way up to, or if somebody is giving you the value that you deserve for what you're willing to spend up to. That's very, very, very important. And I think a lot of times, going to why they get the bad reputation is because they want to charge you top dollar and then perform at a level down here. Well, no, I need to be thinking, one, I always encourage my clients, or not encourage it, but my goal is always with my clients is that I want you to ask me how you can support our company more in the future, or reasons to come back, because then I know that I provided a great job, that whatever the value that I required, or whatever the value was at that moment, it didn't deter you enough to say, I'll never spend $5 with her, again. So and that rarely happens. So in it, it's, how comfortable are you going to be? What do you like? What don't you like? I also, Egypt gets a bad rap because they have a lot of, we call it in the States commission opportunities, right? But maybe I'm going to get room for this later on, but they're not always as forthright on it. I think that they think that if they tell you, the business practices, it's going to deter you. But everybody understands that there's a commission. Like if somebody takes you somewhere, more than likely, why would they not get rewarded for it? We literally have referral incentives, everywhere else we know this, but I don't think that they know the terminology to give it its grace, because it follows with poor behavior that shows in this practice. So, maybe I need to work with them on, how we how are we more marketable? Okay. Because my team, I will say, I'm so grateful to literally have a team that is flexible and understanding. And, like I said, with my company, primarily every traveler profile is different. Where you come from is different. What you've grown to expect is different. And a lot of times people that travel, maybe that have gone places, don't understand, they want to behave in the fact that I'm the guest, so what I want is what I want, and of course it's like when you go in somebody else's home, you would never be okay with somebody putting their shoes, their feet on your coffee table. So when you're coming into somebody else's country and having the demands of your convenience, it's never going to mix well, especially when it's with aggression. But a lot of times I will find that majority of the time here, people are very accommodating, especially when they understand that there's a value to be had. Can they be disappointed? Can it go south? Absolutely. And in it, get out quick. Okay. Here for a good time, not a long time. I'm not going to argue with you. We're going to figure this out with Uber. We're going to figure this out on a ride share, whomever. I'm going to talk to the manager. Literally, that's the best. That's the best approach. Let me go with somebody else that, especially if you don't speak Arabic, like you're kind of wasting your time. And while I have been taking Arabic, and my Arabic is very poor, but I'm gonna say,
how long did you I mean, how long ago did you start learning, and are you confident at all already?
no, I talk like a toddler. Okay, it's very one-worded responses. Like, I've gotten to understand that my comprehension. While of course I don't understand exactly, but my comprehension, I can figure out what they're trying to tell me. I can figure out a lot of times what they're talking amongst. And yeah, I'm really proud of myself. I didn't think that, but as far as being able to speak it or form a sentence, la, and that's all. As far as we're going. It's so basic, but even with the women in the group, I feel so bad. I think that's just the not only American in me, but the foreigner in me, where would I might understand what they're saying, but to try to respond in a complete sentence, it's like, can I just answer in English? Because this is what I don't know how to give more articulation in this, this language, but inshallah, okay, that I will have some growth, some shift in the future. It's literally like, oh my gosh.
It's very difficult. So,
you know very well if you hear it,
completely
something bad's going to happen.
Alexandra, what was your experience like in Egypt when you lived there?
What was my experience with regard to what aspect in
just
particular?
General life, shopping, going to work, everything.
Well, my experience was because I was not really, it was easier for me because I was living with a family of locals, and a completely different experience, I would presume, because I actually had the opportunity to see what life was really like, I wasn't on vacation really, so it's just I think I don't even know if now, because you've been there for 2 years, for sure you've made friends, you've integrated to a certain extent in the local community, I would presume, so maybe now it's different, but if you're there for 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever, just on vacation, you're not gonna have the same type of experience. It's just a completely, to me, it wasn't very, very different than what I'm accustomed to for, whatever reason. But it was like, to me, I didn't have any shock. To me, it wasn't, maybe the only thing that was shocking was that I thought that it would be shocking, and it wasn't.
What part you lived in?
In Cairo, I lived. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like what? Like Mahdi? Was it
New Cairo?
Like Guza?
No, it's I'm gonna butcher it now, but it's Cairo Al Gdida, something like that. I don't know how you say it. Like a New Cairo.
Masr Gdida?
Oh, yeah. Masr Gdida. Yeah.
Bless her heart. Because she's Arabic, so in it is like she knew, because when you said that, I was like, "Ooh, that's not ringing a bell."
That's not right, because you don't even say the Cairo doesn't exist in Arabic, so it wasn't right. And the name of the country, for look, like the name of the country is Musk. It's not like the word Egypt. I think it's a Roman invention, right? It's a Latin word. So, yeah. So Musk Al Gdida, it's like new Egypt, New Cairo. Well, sometimes they will use Egypt, and so they will use the word Musk to say Egypt and also Cairo, if I remember correctly. Although Cairo, you also say Al Kahira. I don't know. Now it's all coming back to me.
I think I'm so impressed, because in it I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I know my area and stuff, but in it I'm glad to hear like you sound like you picked up Arabic a lot easier than I did. Did you take classes?
No, no, but everyone, like, that was I guess the benefit of being completely immersed, within a local community, because I didn't, like, I would, watch Arabic news, and everyone around me spoke, obviously, people spoke English as well to me, but not to each other. So I did pick up a little. But I forgot, like, it's such a long time, really, really long time. It's but probably if I tried to, like, really immerse myself, I would start to, like, it would start to sound familiar to me again. But yeah, that's where I used to live, and it was, Cairo is huge. Like, it's like, 'cause Luke, you were asking earlier whether you should stay in Giza. Giza is like a very small community, or in Cairo, it's like, Cairo has more inhabitants than my whole country. I think Romania right now, like, has some, like, 18 million or something. so so imagine that, like, there's 22 million people in Cairo, and it's huge, and and you're gonna see it. It's like when you drive down the street, you're gonna have that feeling of, like, this place is really huge. You're not. There's some big cities where you don't really have that big city feeling. Like, for instance, like in Spain, Valencia, like, theoretically is the third biggest city in Spain. To me, it feels like just a small town. Really, has a small town vibe. When you're in a place like Cairo, you're not gonna have that. It's just huge, and you can see it and feel like everything, like all the buildings are big and heavy, and the streets are wide, and it just looks and feels big. And yeah, and I guess, like, from where I used to live to Giza, you would drive for, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours, like, it's something.
Wow.
Oh, really? Probably lived more eastern, because so the separation between Cairo and Giza is literally the Nile. So once you cross that bridge, you're right in one. But if you were probably in Cairo more and your life centered around, it took me, I don't know how many months to really, like, I have a good sense of direction, but in understanding, like, that was, like, the difference. And because they all have, like, their what is the word that their sections or their towns, and, like, different area, because it is considered its own governance, I guess, or
Yeah.
and then Cairo has its own. So trying to think of a city, like, kind of like New York. To me, I don't know if you guys have been to New York, but I feel like Cairo is very much like New York's. And so when you hear, like, the different boroughs, like, it's literally how close it can be, but yet it's its own, has its own area or its own section. Another, like, popular, did you go to Zamalek while you were here? Like, the island is probably in the middle, but it's very popular. Definitely for not necessarily tourists, but definitely expats. I don't know, how long you were living here, but I know, like, a lot of um
When I was there, so here's the thing. When I was there, it was right when
the revolution.
yeah, exactly. I was there, so I didn't really go downtown that much. It was
Okay.
like, yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
right, that there's massive protests
Yeah.
for a long time.
Oh, that would have been a time to be here. I've heard
Yeah.
so much about it, because even now it's so funny, because the sense of crime is, like, it might be chaotic, but I never, I think there's people that are foolish, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm going to be attacked, at any given moment, or I don't really feel like I don't have that fear. But they always will reference, like, around that time. And I don't think that there was necessarily, like, of course they were going to go in against the government, but they never really talk about, like, I've heard a lot about how it was, like, a lot of shutdowns and limitations in
Yeah.
areas you go with. So yeah, if you came during that time, I'm so sorry for you, because you probably didn't get to explore
Didn't
a
get
lot of areas that you deserve to be able to see.
no.
That
At the time, yeah, I remember there were military checkpoints on the highway. As you remember, I traveled to Sharm el Sheikh, and I remember, like, down the highway there were checkpoints, like, the military was there. There were yeah, like, at that time, if I remember correctly, like, the police had fled or something like that happened, and the military, like, it was like under military rule for a while, and you would see, like, the military out in the street, and
Yeah.
military vehicles and all that at every street corner. It was pretty intense. I mean, but then again, like, if I had if you, and even for me, like if I had seen that on the news, I would have thought like, oh my God, this is absolutely insane. But I was there and
Yeah.
it's life, you know, and it's like, oh, here's some soldiers out in the street. I didn't really, it was not a big deal when you're there and that's just everyday life. I didn't feel like, yeah, you would hear about all sorts of incidents, some less, pleasant than others. You hear about like people getting attacked or whatever. It wasn't like this. It wasn't. It wasn't like it wasn't. Here's the thing: like those incidents, they were shocking for the people as well. So it's not like it was like prior to that had there was chaos or anything. Like no, like that particular period of time. Yes, it did see an increase, obviously, in all sorts of incidents, right? But yeah, that was pretty intense. But now I assume things have changed. Things are different. The military is back in the.
Yeah, I think the only thing left over that I can see as a result of that is that there's a lot of entry points to places that have these random metal detectors.
Well, that's.
Yeah, I don't think that they said that that was as a result from that they've kept that, but you know, uh, there. I will say, like I said, it's not to any crime that I've witnessed. Actually, I can't say that I've witnessed crime that was necessary before, where I saw, oh, somebody had a gun. Like I've never seen somebody flaunt or play with. Like, of course, it's illegal, to carry firearms, but so I don't know what they're checking for in these metal detectors. But I guess if that's contingent upon somebody still having a job, hey, okay, I'm not, it's not for my to question.
What do you find in Egypt like traveling as a woman? Because in the metro, my research tells me that in the metro, there's a specific woman-only carriage in the metro.
That's in Dubai.
Is
Yeah.
that in Dubai as
No,
well?
it's in here too. It's
Huh?
here too. I has it as well too, which is I've never taken the metro here in Egypt. I do know of it. There's a women's only car, but I have taken the metro in Dubai, and I actually no, I didn't get in the women only car, but I saw that was available. Where I live in the area, see, they're now expanding more. And they're putting more into their infrastructure. So they're creating what is it called? It's a metro line, but it's called I can't think what it's called right now. But it's more that's going to come out into these areas. I can't. It's not a tram. Is it a tram? They're creating, I can't remember exactly, but basically a metro system similar to in like Dubai. They're creating it out here and extending beyond. Now their metro system is just underground. And like I said, because of the areas it is, I don't live down there, so I've never had a need to try to. And I was, it's so funny. I didn't, think this was going to be in the part of our conversation today, but I was just in an area downtown yesterday, and I thought the friend that I was with, she was going to ride it to her area, and I thought maybe I should just ride it just to say I've gotten on it before, because I've heard that it's very clean, very efficient. It just didn't work out for she wasn't interested in, and it was like, okay, it's not. It would literally add time on my commute, and I'm just ready to get home. I will say one of the conveniences, we have a lot of rideshare companies, so in it you can usually always find, and then the cost of it, of course it is increasing because fuel is starting to increase, expenses are starting to increase here. It seems like almost every other week now, but you can still, I don't think it's as cheap as the metro, but I think definitely compared to especially the UK, because I was just in Greece last month or in March, and the I bought a pass over several days, so it definitely had its value convenience. But I think that pass, for what I paid for that pass, it probably would have been equivalent to what I would have paid, maybe a little bit more, maybe less, for rideshare for a week worth of rides in my communal area. So um, the I'm used to these prices because of the states, so the convenience, of course, they have microbuses, and that is another form of public transportation here. I've heard that it is quite affordable, I guess, too. I think like £6 Personally, I've never taken it. I don't think that I ever will be. The system of it is very like, okay, I don't understand it. I don't know where the stops are. There's no stop signs. I don't even know how you
You
figured it out.
wave, I guess. Like, here's the thing, like in Egypt, anyone who can afford not taking public transportation will not take public transportation. I've never used public transportation. No one I know ever uses public transportation.
Which is, I would love to be one of those people that are definitely contribute to the economy. And, I mean, I definitely am, but it's like, you know, there's no like regular bus. There's no bus stops out of my house. So like I said, I can see the microbuses, but I have I have no knowledge of how you hail them. I don't even know how you find the schedule. I honestly don't want to know. So that's a part of why I don't know. It worked out for the convenience. Is like, alhamdulillah, that I have been able to afford, to ride in the car. But if it came down to it, I mean, I'm sure I would, definitely figure out. I feel like, I was in Cuba. This was so many years ago, but just like their system, they had like that hailing system where it was like these random cars, and you would just as you said, you would just literally, hail, and it was really foreign, a little bit uncomfortable, but I clearly this is 8 years ago, so I made it. It was definitely, it's not something I wouldn't try again. You just adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on Baltimore, where you're from in the US, did you know this is where the Star Spangled Ballet was actually written in Baltimore Harbor?
Mm-hmm. Have you been to Baltimore?
No, I haven't.
Okay, Fort McHenry, like there's in that area. Yes, I do know because the Fort McHenry, we could go up there. It's one of the best lookout points too. But for the area that you're talking about, it's a little bit it is Fort McHenry, but I didn't go to that part. But Fort McHenry Hill, everyone like that's the best spot in my city to get a photo of the skyline. Like it's so beautiful.
So how did you end up moving from Baltimore to Egypt?
It was not even a plan at all. This was never on the bingo card. I came to Egypt on, like I said, it was a travel deal that I came about, and it was for Dubai and Egypt. So I came to both the same tour, and ironically, I was supposed to be coming with 3 other people, and they all had to back out. And so this ended up being my first trip going internationally solo, and I was terrified, but I was going to stay that course, and it changed my entire life. Like I came here, and it wasn't like versus like Dubai, like to say like, oh my gosh, I just loved Egypt so much more. It was the opportunities that kind of came out, the experiences that I had from it. And what ended up happening was I met someone that works in the same industry. I hired them. And because I owned a company, it was like, well, look, if you're interested in bringing tours here, I can definitely assist with you. And so I was like, okay, the company was still, at that time I had another company, and I was just into entrepreneurship full time. I don't even think it was a year yet. No, like 5 months. I think like 5 months. I had just left, my 9 to 5 job. And so, in it, after I did this tour, I was like, okay. So I started planning. We scheduled a tour for that May, which actually it was exactly 3 years ago, right around this time, and learned so much. Learned so much from that tour, but also just learned my willingness to continue to go outside of my comfort. And so we did that tour, it was a success. We planned for another tour in the fall, and so I came back earlier. It was in the winter, but I came back earlier, and when I came, I only bought a one-way ticket. I don't know. I was literally touring around Europe first. So I was in Greece, I was in Paris, I was in, where else were we? London. Oh, that was London too. And in it, I was like, okay, I knew I knew Egypt was the last stop, but I never bought a return. And so when I bought the return, I thought I was going to be here for like a week, but I had the space and the availability to say, okay, I stayed a month. And that really helped me to see that I love Baltimore. Baltimore is definitely, I love the US as well, because I grew up in the Midwest. So in it, both essences are a part of me, but I really just wanted something different from Baltimore. I felt like I had outgrown, I just needed I needed to go somewhere different to grow differently, And so when Egypt came about, when we were talking about opening this company, it was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, you know? And so once I put it out there, I returned in November, and I was a part of a business cohort with Goldman Sachs at that time. So I had to go back and graduate and, conclude with that. But I knew I was pretty serious about moving to Egypt. And then New Year's Eve, like it literally was like, it's now or never. And before that night struck, I was meeting my friends. I booked my one-way ticket and left 2.5 weeks later, and I've gone back. I went back last summer. So I've definitely been back to visit. But I was here for 1.5 years before I did that. And yeah, people always ask me, it was like, oh, how do you like Egypt? And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's definitely some days, like for all the things that you guys have made complaints about. Oh, trust me, I understand. I live here. So I got to deal with, it all the time, not only on the touristy level, but on the community level, in just different aspects. But what I love about it is that I ultimately understand is like, I'm choosing this. So as I said, what you're not choosing, what you're not changing, you're choosing. There's so many added benefits, like, the value of my currency, and also having the value of my currency definitely allows for me to have more comforts here in life. That's why I've never taken Metro or had to resort to it. And it's not to say that I wouldn't, it's just to say that, hey, I have the affordability where it's not making or breaking my income, or my pocket. And then having my friends and family and also assisting people. It was my goal when I moved here to assist. As I've said several times, I'm very passionate about us showing African Americans that traveling is their birthright, and kind of just showing them through my legacy experience how it can be afforded, how to get them. So it's very easy to say, okay, come on to Egypt because I'm here. But the amount of people that have come to visit me in the time that I've been here, a blessing, loved ones, friends, people that see my posts on Instagram. I need to be more consistent. We all could have more visual presence, but that has been a blessing, because while it was always my goal to assist 50 people, I've surpassed that now in 2 years, assisting 50 people come see Egypt. So it's like, who would have thought? Who'd have thought? Like I said, we just wrapped up a tour a few days ago, and the family is already sending me requests on wanting to come back, but like maybe I need to come for a month, right? Where that might not necessarily be, available for them, but to know that I don't know how their history, how their experience would have been. I wasn't present when they left a review, but I was seeing in our social media, the family had left a review where they were just naming, people in my company. And I was grateful that they had a personal touch and a personal reference to then say to me later on, well, yeah, we're definitely going to come back, so that, I don't know if I necessarily Egypt chose me. We chose each other. It just ended up happening. And, as I say all the time, it's like, I'm here until my spirit says it's time. It's time to try something new.
That was because I was going to ask if you see yourself as kind of living there long term, but I guess you answered that now. It's like it all. Who knows?
I think but just being a traveler at heart is like, I think I've learned in this is like, I want to have that nomad experience. I want to live in different places. I think in the States, with our education system, it definitely kind of sets you up in much to what you were saying, Alex, in the beginning about that separating between the pleasures of working and living, and why are we trying to justify, enjoying life. And I could not agree with you more if that is definitely, what you were speaking to. I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of times we get so caught up in what we have to afford of the life that we want to live, that we labor, we labor most of our weeks, most of our days, to be able to acquire this. And life is meant to be enjoyed. Unfortunately, we're born into a system of rules, understanding, regulations, but to explore beyond that, that's why right now, and it's like, how long will I be in Egypt? I don't know. When we did a tour last year in Thailand, I don't think that I would want to live there, but if that happened to come about, or there's something that was just an irresistible opportunity, okay. Last year I got to go to Doha, which that was also never a place that I was like looking to visit, but I loved it. Like, it was so fun, and reminded me so much of the States. So I really want to stay heed to that. You know, if it comes to the point where I acquire a husband, acquire children, hopefully this can go where it's like, okay, we live in here next month, or we're living there, you know, and they're still progressing and growing and being the best versions of themselves. So I guess I'm that worldly person, but you know, with great intent and great opportunities, you know, to come about.
So but you don't have like a next destination set in mind, or like not even thinking like, you know what, maybe that would be. Yeah, I'm curious about that.
No, no, nothing. No, not I wish I had an answer for you. Now, what I would say, if there's something, like I said, I would have Paris, no one would have been surprised if I was living in Paris. To know me, you know, prior to, they wouldn't have been surprised. And then when I went to Paris, Paris was not what I thought.
Everyone says that it's like such a letdown.
Well, I think also because it's the number one city from, you know, from my research, it's the number one visited city in the world. So I think a lot of anybody having guests in their home that are always questioning and wanting it to be about them leads to that resentment of, no, I'm going to force you to be how we, you know, to accommodate or to be respectful of how we're, I'm going to act like, because a lot of them speak English, but they will act like they do not because they don't want to, you know, they don't want to deal with it. So I could definitely, yeah, I cannot think.
I think like the do you think that the like France maybe, or not France in its entirety, but like Paris in specific took on that identity? It's like it stopped being Paris and it started being the most visited city in the world.
Well, I think that they have like some of the most notable things of, you know, an association. Like Paris associated with love. Who doesn't love love? You know, you know. So when you have those play on associations that people are chasing, I think that that helps for it. But when you actually get there, you might not see some that Parisian love is a little bit different. That might not be, you know, what you want. I think the same thing with New York. You know, you would be surprised how many people, especially here, like they have comments of New York that I was like, oh, you know, some love it. And then they're just like, oh, I didn't like this and I didn't like that. And it's like, but people love their songs, you know, notable songs about New York and how great it is. So yeah, for myself, I really try to make myself really flexible. I thought for a moment that I wanted to go to Greece, like I could live in Greece for a moment. And then when I was just there in March, I was like, this is good for visiting, you know, and just for visiting.
You know what's funny is that actually I lived in Greece for like I don't know, some 8-10 months, something like that, I forget. And that was also my first impression. Like when I first arrived, and I lived in Athens, and when I first arrived in Athens, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna leave this place so soon, I cannot be here. And it had like, it grew on me somehow, I don't know, it's like out of all the places that I've lived for extended periods, it's the only one where I dream of it like at night. I don't know, it got under my skin, I didn't even like it at first, and now, you know, I kind of miss it a little.
Well, you know, if you also have that flexibility, like I said, I love that concept and hearing where you're saying, like, not focusing on labor to not enjoy life, but, you know, to produce something. So if you can find that space where it allows you to have that flexibility to move around and experience different, I think everybody owes that to themselves. You know, I always feel somebody that's like, oh, I lived in my my hometown my entire life. And it's like, I don't think that that's something to really brag about, you know? It's like for somebody that has perfect attendance at work or school. It's like,
I've been working on sick. I didn't take any sick days. I've been working sick. Doesn't matter.
you know,
I don't know.
that's not anything to brag about. Congratulations to your employer. You know, like, but you just gave them your time, and is the value, you know, really worth it at the end? So yeah, everybody chase your dreams so that you can have that freedom. No, you know, laboring to death is not the answer, but if that's your means to, okay, you know, it's ultimately mindset. And you know, if people just see a difference in and believe it, yeah, that makes all the difference.
I have two more questions for you, and then I'm probably gonna let you go, right, Luke? Because we've already been doing this for I think about an hour and a half. So we want to also be respectful of your time as well, because you already said like you had a pretty hectic day, so don't want to add to the stress of that. But two more things that I want to ask. One of them would be, I have this thing where I'm so because for instance, like I was born in a former communist country, and so like I never want to travel to other former communist countries because it kind of brings back a lot of unpleasantness. But after having that experience with Greece, where it didn't, not that Greece is like, I know Greece is not a former communist country. I just want to make a comparison here because I had an experience with Greece where I arrived there and I didn't like it, but then it grew on me, and I sort of thought about what if what if what if I go to another former communist country and I don't know, there's something about it that I find charming, or so there's something. The point I'm trying to make is like I want to challenge some of those aspects or some of those beliefs that I have, and this is also one of the reasons why we have this podcast, because we want to challenge those perceptions a little bit. And within myself, like I want to travel to a former communist country just to kind of see. Well, first of all, is it that bad? Like, is it really going to bring up a lot of trauma, whatever you want to call it? Or am I going to discover something, like I said, like maybe charming or pleasant or whatever? So my question is, like, do you have a country that you fear, for lack of a better word, or where you think like, I don't know, maybe don't want to travel there, but then at the same time, where you also like have a desire to challenge yourself, I guess. Like, I don't like it, but I'll go there to kind of confront that fear, if that makes sense.
Fear, no. A country that I didn't quite enjoy.
Oh, okay.
This is a two for okay. To answer the question, one, I didn't quite enjoy Iceland, and the reason why is because I'm not a cold person. So it was blue, was beautiful, but it was so cold in August. I was not impressed by that. I was disappointed. Of course, I didn't do my research enough. I just wasn't anticipating to be so cold, and it was just unnecessarily expensive in my opinion. However, I did hear that the reason why their prices were set, because I like, and this is where I use a reference, a bowl of soup was like $17. I remember we played equivalent in US.
Expensive.
And it was like a bowl of soup, so that just kind of just lets you understand the level of the cost of goods there. But I've heard, so many different things that when you say like, why not? Maybe I'm not giving it. Maybe I need to go back in June when that's the true warmer, maybe that's the kickoff. Cause like I said, I'm just not a cold person. So that wasn't my, enjoyment from that. But as far as, you know what, if I were to say a place, not to say I feared that I didn't, there's parts of Egypt that there's like, I just had an experience, like when I went down to, so they call the South, they call it Upper Egypt. So like Aswan, Luxor, they call this area Upper Egypt. When I went to Aswan, I did not love it for the amount of time that I stayed there. So to answer your question, there probably would be here in Egypt, but I think that is just like, I think everywhere has the potential, but maybe just certain areas, like that's just not your area. Yeah, here, for what you say for the hustle culture, there was an instance where I was walking and I just kept getting badgered by these guys. And it was like, that was very uncomfortable. But I think I've had uncomfortable moments. I'm telling, like I went to Ireland one time and I got assaulted by somebody. And I always give Grace the story, but very, very quick version, because I didn't assess that this guy severely had mental health issues. What I saw was just somebody that had a disability. And so I did not sense the mental health issue. So when he assaulted me, it literally wasn't like he wasn't attacking me. He was just reacting to, I walked behind him and he didn't see it. I startled him or something. But so yeah, that wasn't the best encounter, but we were coming from Guinness, which we had an amazing time, the Guinness factory. So, that was like the trade-off where it was like great. Jameson was great. I went there. I think we went to Temple's bar or the area. We actually didn't go in that bar. So there was like great moments there, but that moment I will never forget that I got assaulted by this individual. And so yes, no, an area that I fear, no, but I just fear crazy people. So I think it's that sense of, when you start seeing when somebody's giving you, don't wait around for them to show you who they are. Just believe it when you see it. Yeah, let me get out. I can miss the story behind this because there's been, like I said, even for what you're saying, like there is literally some beautiful parts of Egypt that you would not. The area that I live in is a very nice community area. So in it, it's like somebody was telling me, and it was just crazy. I think they were speaking to like maybe the adversity that they experienced around the world, and they were saying somebody asked them did they ride up to the pyramids on a camel, and it was just like, why would you? They have cars. Like that was just so insane to me. But I guess that is like the stereotype, the ignorance that some people have a drawback from.
Yeah.
And so, maybe there's a heightened fear of, something with the animals or something, but
Well, like the pyramids are right there, like you drive by them. It's not like it's like maybe people imagine like that the pyramids are somewhere like deeply hidden in the they're not. Like you drive
they're not
down the
middle. And they literally set up like you can see all the skyline, around. So yeah, I'm sorry. I can't, I just have instances where I didn't enjoy in that area. I can't say that it was enough to say I had a fear.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, yeah.
That's great, actually. That's right.
Yeah, it's really fortunate. Like I said, I think my assessment, you're talking about risk assessment, or you talked about it, mentioned it before, but my risk assessment where it's just like, I'm just totally aware, try to be as aware as possible. So if it seems uncomfortable, I don't want to sit here and try to investigate and figure it out. I'll hear about it later on. Let me go the other way. I'm not one of those people whatsoever. I'm try to attempt things very rational. So, in it, even when there's a escalation happening, I assess that I probably need to remove myself or, get out of it. I was telling you guys before, sometimes if people are, like I said, if you're sitting here arguing over $1, like, that's not me. Take this $1, go about your life. If there's any karmatic, energy, it's like, well, look, I'm not gonna get that bad debt. So you just go ahead, you have to answer for this from somebody else. It's not my position to be. Wait, do you have a place? Do you have a place that you're like?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like, there's a difference between like immediate danger. Yeah, like I'm not thinking philosophically about immediate danger. I'm just like you said, I'm removing myself from that situation as fast as I can. But there's more like philosophical fear, where like I told you, I wouldn't fear. I swear, I have like I don't know that I want to see for another former communist country. Like I have this thing that kind of stay away from.
It's PTSD.
Yeah, that's not even my thing. Like that's some generational thing, like from my parents and their parents. But I guess that's more philosophical. Like that's not real risk, right? Like that's a fear. That's some different type of fear. Like with real danger, I will definitely respect that fear, that I'm feeling, and trust my gut and just walk away. But no, I don't know that there's a place that I respect, that I fear like a priori, unless it's like a place that, is obviously, like there's a war going on or something like that. Like Ukraine is like the neighboring country of Romania. I don't really particularly feel a need to visit Ukraine right now, because there's a war going on. So like there's stuff like that where it's more the reality of the situation. You would best stay away to that thing. But no, not otherwise. No, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to ask you, like, what Luke was asking me earlier about, how I perceived Egypt, and I was just saying that I was, if you will, shocked that I didn't have a shock, because things were just like life was just normal life, and there was nothing really that I found strange or different. And I wanted to ask you whether you had any cultural shocks, or not even cultural, just any shocks of whatever nature when you first moved there.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely. one of the weirdest things to me, I didn't understand why they didn't want to wear seatbelts. They will literally
Oh, okay.
pieces of like the ends of the seatbelt buckle. And then they would gloat about it, right? It was just so funny to me because it would be like, yeah, we have this little piece and we put it in our seatbelt so it stops it. It makes it think the car that you're wearing it, and it's like, I think that it's telling you to wear it for safety. Why don't you, like, I don't think they're saying like, oh, this is a fun accessory. And I get it because I don't know, when everybody kind of grew up, but I know like in the 90s, it was always like, okay, as long as you're in the back seat, you never have to wear a seatbelt. And so I still carry the same bad habit of sitting in the back seat and not even thinking about putting my seatbelt on. And ironically, some of the cars here don't even have seatbelts in the back seat. That part is just crazy. That was a shock to me. So yes, that was a huge, huge culture shock for me, just because I just didn't understand what we have going on here. And even some of the conditions of like the cars that are on the road, it's like,
Yeah.
what emission cleared this, Like,
Have you ever seen a car where it didn't have a dent in somewhere? I don't know. It's because it's like I remember thinking, like the people that was hanging out with when I was there were telling me like if you ever see a car that's clean, new, shiny, doesn't have any dents, like that's someone who's probably visiting from Saudi Arabia. We don't have that here.
or they have money and they have a garage and they don't probably drive much, because I have come across some people that have like high-end cars, and literally, they go A to B, probably just a little ride of a joy ride, but that car is not for, their everyday use. Because yes, it was also very in the States, everybody has car insurance. It's a must. Everybody has car insurance. So here, when they get into car accidents, because it's not required for everybody to have car insurance, it's a lot of like, no problem. You're okay. Alhamdulillah. Like they overlook it. That was a really, especially when I was in the car. I was in car and we got rear-ended, and it was more of a bump than a huge impact. Thank goodness. However, I felt that, and nobody even asked me if I was okay. It was like the car's fine and we can all leave and go about. So that was definitely a culture. They just do things so differently. I literally have to while some of the practices, some of the thoughts do not make any sense to me, I absolutely have accepted that I am the problem because I'm the only one with this problem. They function completely fine in this, and I'm the only one, So looking at from that gauge literally humbles me to just think, okay, the smoking, like in the States, well, certain states, but definitely in Maryland, you can't smoke indoors. I think even the casinos have restricted or limited or put a designated area. So there's no smoking in restaurants. Whereas here, oh my gosh, they smoke right next to you. Like a non-smoking section, I don't think really exists, here. And smoking in the Ubers, that is like when you get into the cars and you're like, ask them to put the cigarette out or along the ride, and it's like it's so uncomfortable because some of them will ask, some of them won't. I can't say most, but that is always going to be foreign for me, where it's like, yeah, they have a system of I can't really say it works for them, but they know it enough to make it work for them, and for that I just try to either I breathe through the process, or I either stay in the house and just recognize, like I said, I am the only one complaining about this. Not really, but the majority think differently. Okay, sure.
There's a complaining culture throughout the Middle East. It's not like it's like people will complain, but it's not like no, it's just a pastime activity mostly. It's just conversation. It's not that serious.
So, yeah, it's hopefully you guys come back. I will happily welcome you guys, and I would not can say I would really be offended, but please don't lose out on that opportunity because just off of this, it doesn't have to be for the stereotype that you see. It's in understanding, just express your desires, your needs, your wants, and it can definitely be. And like I said, also, there are great people here. There are some really great people. During Ramadan, I would take walks around my complex, and I remembered the guy. So it was just the iftar, so the sunset had just set, and as I'm walking, he is offering me his food, and I'm thinking like, sir, you haven't. And I don't think I think he would have been really hurt if I had taken the food because he just waited all day. But the fact that you even offered, I don't. That was just beautiful to me. I can't even say vice versa, but the fact that you knew you just fast all day and you see me walking and you're like, please have a bite. And it's like, sorry, I didn't fast. I'm good. You enjoy every bite of this because you stood this course, for this where, my course is to walk this, take this walk.
I'm sure he wouldn't have been offended. Then that's customary, actually. When
Yeah.
they break the fast, it's
You're right.
customary to offer to whoever is. Yeah. But well, definitely, like, even for me, I have a lot to see because, like, due to the political events that were going on, I didn't really get the chance to see everything. So definitely, I have a lot to catch up. So I'll definitely, reach out to you and see what we can we can put together. And yeah, I'll let I'll let Luke and Elsa ask some final questions, and before we before we split, before we close and split. And but one more thing, and I think that I wanted to ask, because I was actually thinking about it these days. Because I also had like a really special relationship with my grandpa, and I was, now when you talked about him, I was just wondering, like, if you could travel with him, for one trip, where would you go?
Brazil. He had an interest in Brazil, or I probably would say between Brazil and Panama. But I feel like I've gone to Panama, but I haven't been to Brazil yet. But I feel like from what I know of them venturing there, I would like to see how that tour would have went.
Well, Luke, you have some experience in that department.
Yes, he does.
I was in Brazil this year for the first time, and my wife is from Brazil, so yeah. We're
Did you go
definitely going to be returning to Brazil.
Okay, good. See, did you go during Carnival?
No, we didn't actually go to Rio.
Okay.
We went to Fortaleza to visit her family, but next year we're definitely going to Rio.
Wow, I can't wait to see these photos and the experience of. But Brazil always looks really, really fun, really great. Yeah, I can't wait to hear about it.
All right, Luke, Elsa, do we have any questions for our guest today? We've already I think asked so much. I was so curious about so many things, but do you guys do you have any questions left?
I don't have any further questions, but I'd just like to say to Michelle, I felt like you were very brave to go to Egypt alone after your friends pulled out, and also you were very brave to give up your job and go into business full time as well.
Thank you
Sure.
so much. Thank you. It's not easy, but it's so worth it. I really, I hope if anything somebody takes away from this interview is just like, have the courage to fail. Okay. Cause in it's not going to be perfect. Look how our day was. Honestly, this was such a conversation. I know also had another conversation for me, but just definitely in conclusion, it's like, today was one of those days that if it can go wrong, it absolutely will. And it did, in so many ways, but this was such an amazing conversation. So I thank you guys for just having me on here, being able to ramble on about my passions, just having that courage, and then somebody seeing like, oh, it sounds like it's cool enough to hear your story. So thank you for this space. Like I said, you guys are always more than welcome, or just any destination. We do specialize in just organizing and arranging, but especially here in Egypt, because I'm here, I would highly make myself available to meet you, at a restaurant, or take you guys out to see something different, because you definitely deserve that, and you definitely have been so gracious to me today.
And thank you so much for joining us. Sorry, Luke. Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure. And next time you're in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi, just bring me here. And by the way, where we can find you and where we can contact.
I'm on social. I heard Luke before reference both of my websites, so I thank you so much. Of course, both of these companies are listed on social media. So Soul Journey, both of them at Soul Journey Travel, on Instagram, on Facebook, really all of them. Also, Experience Egypt Tours is listed. Our handle is Experience for Egypt underscore tours. But nonetheless, we are on social medias, and I'm certain even if you go on there, if you want to contact me personally, you can find me through these pages. I'm definitely, I'm definitely on there. My profile's on there, so I love connecting with people. Definitely send a shout out if you have any questions about Egypt or just any just travel related. Don't hesitate. My team would love to assist, and we love just making people's experiences worthwhile. So thank you so much for asking that.
Oh, and listen, if you have any partners or employees or just people that you're connected to who are running tours in other countries, would love to come to, talk about their experience living in that country, organizing tours, interacting with tourists, definitely send them our way. Would be more than happy to have them on. And it's really from wherever the world, whatever country, wherever they are. We're always happy to talk to people. It doesn't really have to be from like a super glamour, like it doesn't have to be from Paris, right? As a matter of fact, the more interesting or less explored, the better, right? And particularly if it's like some country that has I don't know, bad reputation or some, damaging stereotypes. We're all about, challenging those types of beliefs. So yeah, sorry.
Definitely, I definitely will. I have for you reference. I definitely refer people because, you know, this is a great space to be able to just showcase and give people limelight into different areas. So happily, if I come across some, Luke and I are connected on social media, so I'll just be forward. I'm like, oh, I think that they would be a great fit, for you.
Listen, that's great. And thank you so much thank you for, first of all, accepting the invitation and being patient and waiting for everything to fall into place, waiting for us to collect ourselves. I was really, really, really grateful for that. And if you ever want to come back to our show to promote a new business venture that you started, we'll be more than happy to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And and thank you to our audience who's hopefully watching. Please, guys, comment, like, subscribe. Luke, where can people find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter? Can you please?
So TikTok is Worldwide Travel Podcast. Twitter, WY Travel Pod. Facebook is Worldwide Travel Podcast. Instagram as well, Worldwide Travel Podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, follow us on our socials and stick around for more episodes.
Definitely.
Yay!
One last thing before we close, okay? Now the final thing, like we just want to leave people with some food for thought. I mean, not that they don't already have a lot to think about after this conversation, but Michelle, you know very well how hard it is for people to have the courage to, go off the beaten path. And as a final word before we stop the recording, I just want you to tell people who are maybe like thinking about trying an alternative lifestyle. And maybe, they have this desire, like, I would maybe love to go explore, but how am I going to live? How am I going to build a family? You know the thing. Like, what would you tell them to encourage them to pursue that curiosity?
I would say to definitely. Can I curse? Can I curse?
Sure.
Okay. So book the damn ticket, right? This is a phrase I say. So in it, if you come across a travel deal, especially to your desired place, or even if something that wasn't desired, book the ticket, especially if you can afford it, and give yourself time to just don't create an itinerary. Go there and discover there. I think that's a great way. I mean, literally, when I came here, I didn't have a schedule. We had a tour set for the pyramids, but the rest of the time was open, and literally it led to me moving to the city. I said I was in Dubai before, but I didn't have a desire to live in Dubai. And I had a great time. I went to some of the best, rooftop pools and, experiences, but literally just invest in yourself, for whatever that costs, whatever it is. So definitely when travel, find when the travel deals is. A piece of advice I would say is if it's about affordability, well, look in the off season, flights are usually cheaper in the fall time, September, at the end of August, September. That's because to October, because kids are back in school. So that is a great time to always catch flights on sale. Right now, in the beginning of May, is a really sweet time because the kids are not out of school yet. So those last few weeks of April to end of May, you will find really good travel deals as well too. So just that giving that advice is like, okay, well, look, you might think that your travel destination is out of your price point, but change your perspective and keep yourself flexible. And when the opportunity, don't overthink it. If it makes sense and it's affordable, hey, go with it. But that is a great way to just see something different. I wouldn't have thought that the cost of living, and even for where you guys are located now, and what it takes to survive there. So if you can afford there and maintain a lot of how you source your income in those areas, just think in another area that their value, the exchange value is different. How much more could you afford there? And what could life be like? And also, it's okay if it doesn't work out. One thing I've always said, and I really will stop after this, if this did not work out or something doesn't work out, I'm returning back to love. I'm returning back to people that love me, that are going to look out for me, that are going to protect me. And I think that is the vast majority of people. Whether, even if you're not on the best of terms, you probably can go to somebody that can help you out, that loves you and wants the best for you, and they're willing to be invested in that area. So that's where you got to understand that, hey, if all else fails, if I get to return back to my parents, to my siblings, to my loved ones, that's a blessing. And in them loving you, you create opportunities for them. They get to come visit you there because they love you, So it goes hand in hand, but you do have to be courageous to just be okay with things not going as perfect as you would want them to. I'm very guilty of that. This morning when I was saying things were not going a particular way, we had a photo shoot and everything. The photographer was late, the rides were late, like everything. But if you saw the video, which I'm going to post on our social media in a few moments, of the couple that I got at the it was beautiful. And we literally did this in no less than 20 minutes, Like I had a very small window because of just timing, but just staying flexible and just being like, okay, you know what? It's going to be okay. And I'm going to figure a way. Because there's still great people. If you find yourself in a jam, to be destitute, you'll find somebody that'll just offer, hey, do you need a ride? Do you need help with something? So yeah, that would be my tidbit. Book that ticket, get out of town, get out of your comfort. You got this.
Okay, that's actually great advice. You heard it, guys. Just book the damn ticket, like first.
Yes.
And on that note, I will tell everyone goodbye, and we'll see you all next week with some great conversation, and hopefully another super cool guest. So see you everyone.
See ya.